This happened a good 20 plus years ago, and I had forgotten about it until this day. I think it's a good reminder that sometimes the most unexpected things can happen when you least expect it. This event really made me feel like I couldn't be safe anywhere, and caused me to be hyper-vigilant every time I left my house. And that feeling stayed with me for a long time afterwards. Also, a trigger warning. This involves assault of a sexual nature. It was wintertime, about 11 in the morning, and I was standing at a bus stop. This bus stop was in a mini mall, where there is a bigger department store, a dollar store, and a little shop. I was going to catch the bus to my brand new job, and that day was going to be my very first day at the new shop. So I was excited and nervous and definitely wanted to make a good impression. While I was waiting for the bus, I realized I was a good 15 minutes early, and also that I had forgotten my gloves, and it was bitterly cold out and my hands were freezing. But I only had a couple of dollars on me, so I figured it would be cheapest to buy new gloves at the dollar store. And when I went into the store, it was quite big, but there were no other people in there yet, besides this older man behind the front counter. He gave me a big smile and came around the counter to stand next to me. I asked him where the gloves were located, and he said, "I show you." As soon as he had said this, he laughingly grabbed my left hand with his right one and starts bringing me back towards the back of the store. The back of the store had a display table with some stuff on it, toys I think. On the wall behind the table was a section with winter items on it, and just to the right of that is a door that says, "Employees Only." Everything happened really fast. When he grabbed my hand and started bringing me towards the back, I just kind of awkwardly laughed because he was laughing, and I just thought that he was an overly friendly guy who was trying to be super helpful. I had also been in the store a couple of times before this, and both times the same guy was there. But he was ringing people up and he was always happy, smiley and laughy with every customer he interacted with. I never got any weird vibes any other time I was in there. So, just as we got to that back area, out of nowhere, the hand holding mine clamps around my wrist really hard. His other hand reaches over, grabs my breast ridiculously hard, twists it, and starts trying to push me towards the employees only door. I couldn't believe how fast everything changed and this happened. I'm so happy that I had worn my shit-kicking boots that day, because the only thing I could do was kick him in the shin and try to pull away from him. We went back and forth with me trying to get away from him, while he tried to get a hold of my arm tighter, and while also trying to push me towards the door while I'm still trying to land kicks. And in all of this, he lost his balance and started to fall onto the display table. And then I was able to get my arm away, and I just took off running as fast as I could. I ran into the back of the big store next door. They had a customer service department there where there were other people and phones. So to try to wrap this up, I used the store's phone to call my mom because, I don't know why, I was confused if I should call the cops. I was trying to figure out what just happened, while also realizing shit. I had missed the bus and I'm going to mess up my first day at the new job. I did call the cops though, after I got off the phone with my mom who came to get me. The way I looked at it was like, okay, I was alright, but what if I hadn't gotten so lucky? What if this guy does this to someone else and they don't get away? What if something even worse could happen to someone else, or already did? This happened in broad daylight, on a weekday morning, so this could happen to anyone. They arrested him and we had to go down to the station to give my statement. About a week later, there's an article in the newspaper that they arrested 5 people that owned the dollar store because they had apparently been setting up these dollar stores for a few weeks as a front for some shady stuff, and then they would close it down, wait a month or two, go to a different county and open another one. Like I said in the beginning of this messed with me for quite a while after that. I didn't feel safe when I left my house. I just wanted to buy a dang pair of gloves that day. So guy from the dollar store, please, let's not meet again. To start things off, this incident occurred in a small town community where it's not really crime-ridden or exactly dangerous. Around this time last year, I was working full-time at a little Japanese retailer shop at the mall near my house. My schedule fluctuated, but the majority of my shifts were closing shifts. I preferred this because it gave me enough time to sleep in and make myself a lunch, catch the bus, get to the mall a bit earlier to buy snacks and a drink, before I would begin my dreaded 8.5-hour shift. On one particular day, as I was getting ready to walk to the bus stop, I saw a big commotion going on right across from my house at the town hall. I crossed the street right in time before several other police cars and an ambulance rushed by, sirens wailing so loud, I'm sure the entire neighborhood heard them. I was wondering what was going on, but quickly disregarded it, as I got on the first bus nearby my house. I got off at the intersection where I was supposed to take a second bus that leads straight to the terminal across the mall. While I was waiting at the shelter, I see a guy around my age in his mid-20s staring right at me, with eyes so black and empty. Mind you, there was no one else around besides the two of us. I remember thinking to myself that it seemed odd he was wearing a sweater with a heavy-looking backpack and construction boots, both of which were oversized for his tall, slim figure when it was blazing hot outside. Not even for a split second did he tear his gaze away from me, and then it quickly hit me that I recognized him as a regular customer that frequently comes in to buy earphones at the store that I worked at. Now, I usually try to keep to myself, but for some reason, I've been told I draw all kinds of people to me with my friendly, positive aura. I felt the need to pretend that I was on my phone to avoid any sort of conversation. He then proceeded to take a seat beside me, still gazing at me, and mustered a "Hi," before going on that he recognized me from work, and if I was going there right now and so on. When the bus finally arrived, we both got on and he took a seat next to me. We had small talk about random stuff and our hobbies. He went on to tell me that he was in a broken relationship with his parents, where he ended up getting kicked out. I assumed that he was homeless at first, but he kind of confirmed it subtly when he told me that he's been couch surfing between friends' houses. We finally reached the bus terminal that's across the mall. He ended up walking me to my work. I didn't ask him to, before going off on his own way. Before departing, he asked for my phone number, which I stupidly gave to him and told me, if you ever just want to chill or smoke with me, to text him. After conversing with him, I shrugged off any preconceived judgment that I had of him earlier of being creepy, for just a guy that's socially awkward and perma-fried. He ended up texting me later on that night asking to hang out, but I cut the conversation short, telling him that I was tired and also I had to work the next day. I never heard from him again. Now, here's where things get interesting. After a few days and then weeks, news reports were coming out that there was a violent sexual assault that occurred right where the trails were across my house, near the town hall. The victim was a teenage girl who was going for a walk when she was struck with an unknown object by the suspect. He happened to be armed with a gun and proceeded to assault her before leaving the scene. It took about a week for the police to find the suspect. The investigation was ongoing. It shook up the entire community. Nothing like this had happened before. It's fairly peaceful and close-knit. And it's scary because it happened right in broad daylight. So when police released images of the suspect with his name, following his arrest, I damn near had a heart attack. It was him, the same guy who I met at the bus stop, who had walked me to my work, who asked for my number, who was texting me throughout the day, after committing the crime. He had the same dark, black empty eyes, long hair, and wearing the exact sweater, backpack, and shoes. I started looking at past news reports to compare the dates and times to when he texted me, and they all matched. Needless to say, my intuition about people are on and off, and that I should learn to trust it more. I felt a bit of guilt hoping I could have done something earlier. but there was no way for me to know until after. This happened about a year ago. Everything was spread out over a couple of months. I'm known for being a very smiley, bubbly, and social girl. Okay, here's my experience. At the time this happened, I was the only person who did to-go orders, answered all phones and customer questions, as well as greeting and cashing out to-go or delivery orders. It was mid-December, and where I live, we have a massive Christmas festival and tree lighting. So at the time, I was getting multiple phone calls asking if we would be open, if there are any specials, and so on. I answered the phone and the typical script was said, blah blah blah. He was nice, but after I answered his questions about our restaurant, he started asking questions about me, my age, how long I had worked there, if I was from where the restaurant was located. I felt weird but made an excuse that he didn't have any more questions about the restaurant and I needed to go. He told me that I sounded beautiful and he couldn't wait to meet me. It bothered me a little, but I soon forgot about it. Jump forward a few weeks. The festival's here and we're busy. I'm helping in all aspects of the restaurant, and our bartender comes and grabs me and tells me a man at her table wanted to speak to me. Me thinking that it was a complaint, I tell her okay and I put my best customer service smile on and I go over. Hi everyone, I hope everyone's okay over here, but I heard from our wonderful bartender. One of you wanted to speak with me. My God, you're as beautiful as I dreamed you'd be. It's me, the guy you spoke to a few weeks ago. You were so amazing and I just loved you since then. I was visibly freaked out, and I said, "Oh, thank you. Is anything else the matter?" He said, "No, I just had to see what my new wife looked like." "Oh, well, I've got to go. Y'all have a great night," I responded. I walked away a little nervous, but soon I got distracted. The bartender comes over and tells me that the guy, John, wanted to say goodbye. So I give a smile and I wave, but that was not good enough. He comes to me, arms open, and wants a hug. I awkwardly smile and try to give a distant side hug. And not good enough for him. He grabs my shoulder, causing me to face forward, and gives me a really tight and hard hug. The night's over and I just ignore my uneasy feelings. I end up becoming sick for a couple of days. I come back and my manager comes to speak to me and tells me that John had called the restaurant around 56 times and would only want to speak to me. As we're discussing this, the bartender tells me someone wants to speak with me on the phone. I go behind the bar and answer, and guess who? It's John telling me that he loved seeing me and couldn't wait for us to get married. I hung up. My manager and I just decided to block the phone number. I finish my shift and I start walking to my car. I notice a car parked weirdly in the parking lot. I just giggle and ignore it. The car starts pulling up and says something. I'm not paying attention though, and I don't really hear them. I get into my car and I start replying to texts and I check my phone. I notice the same car is now parked beside me. The window is cracked so I can see that they are facing me, but I can't tell much else. The car then continuously pulls up to each side of my car and stares at me from each side for 5 minutes or so. I notice that it's John, so I'm scared. I was too scared to drive off, thinking that he would follow me. The only thing I could think to do was call my job. 4 guys come sprinting out of the back with knives and the car drives off. We don't have cameras on our parking lot. It's really crappy, I know. They calm me down and I drive home, watching everything around me. That night, my phone started acting extremely weird, shutting on and off, out of control as in apps are opening, even though I haven't touched them and it has never happened before. I decided to shut my phone off completely, knowing that I had another option of calling someone if need be. I wake up the next morning feeling nervous. I get ready for work and I head out to my car. As I'm pulling away, I notice something on the side of my house. I go up to see it's 2 pocket knives. One appeared to have blood on it. The other was above my head, so I had to step back and notice. The second knife was stabbed into the picture. I noticed that it's a picture of me at the store shopping. I was done and I called the police. They take my statement and do the whole process you have to go through when reporting something like this. To make this long story a bit shorter, 2 other scary things that happened were pictures taken of me at random times, and areas were thrown all over my deck and a note left on my car at work that said, "Hi pretty, I love you." The paper looked like it had been soaked in blood. It was fake though. So now the number is blocked. Everyone in my restaurant knows what this man looks like. I get walked in and out of my job by a male manager or a coworker. I have cameras everywhere and weapons. I hate having to do this, but it's for my protection. Nothing has happened for a bit. I just figured others would find this interesting, or maybe it would help someone else and make them feel less alone. This was about 6 or 7 years ago when I was 17. I worked as a soft-line clothing sales associate at a large chain department store. My job was to walk around the floor and essentially keep everything organized. I would fold clothes, clean out the fitting rooms, put items that had been returned back in the right place, and help out any customers who needed it. Generally, I liked the job. It was easy and all the girls that I worked with were around my age and really cool. One of my least favorite parts of the job was answering phone calls. The customer service desk would put relevant calls through to the phone in the appropriate department, for example, women's or kids, and whomever was assigned to that area for their shift would have to answer it. These calls usually consisted of speaking to an employee from another store location about finding an item and putting it on hold for a customer, or speaking to a customer directly about whether or not we had an item that they were looking for. It wouldn't have been so bad if the phones were cordless, but they were not. I have too many memories of having to run back and forth between the phone and the rest of the store, as I looked for whatever the person on the other end had wanted. But I digress. One particular summer day, I remember because the uniform was khakis and a hideous green polo year-round, so I was sweating my ass off. There was a call for the kids department. I made my way over to the phone and I took the call. It was a man speaking in a low voice, as if he was trying to be quiet. The conversation went something like this. "Hi, do you have any socks?" Me being slightly annoyed because this is a clothing store. Obviously we have socks. "Yes, we do." "How big are they?" "Do you mean like what size?" "The kids' socks are just sized like shoes are. So we have socks that fit a range of sizes, like 4 to 6 and so on." "Yeah, but like, how big are they about?" I was very annoyed now because what did he want from me? "I don't know how to answer that. What size shoe does the kid you're shopping for wear?" "Oh, I'm using it for an experiment." That's the last part of the conversation I really remember. It was at that point that I was creeped out by more than his voice, because he sounded like a weirdo. I don't remember how the call ended. I know for sure I maintained my professionalism and found a way out of it, because I can remember telling the girl that I was working with at the time. I ended up telling most of the girls who worked in soft lines with me, because, all creepiness aside, I found it genuinely hilarious. It might be worth mentioning once again that all of us who worked in the clothing department in this store were high school age students. It didn't take super long for one of my colleagues to get a similar phone call. We happened to be working together, and she came to tell me about the weird phone call she just had. We compared our experiences and decided at this point that we should tell a manager, since it apparently wasn't a one-off thing. The manager at the time was a woman around my mother's age, who also happened to have a daughter in high school. I was relieved when she looked disturbed as we recounted our stories, and told us to come get her should he call back. And if you guessed it, he did indeed call back. You get a cookie. The next few times he called, the same colleague got him, and she said the conversation always started with him asking for socks and becoming progressively more creepy. He would always ask really specific questions about how big the socks were and what colors we had. When he asked anything about what he needed for them, he always gave some vague, creepy answer like, an experiment. The way that she described it, he seemed to be escalating from his first few calls. It seemed like he would ask more questions or be breathing more loudly as he called back more often. What bothers me the most about this now, though, is that it always had to be kids' socks. He always called the kids' department, and he always confirmed he was looking for kids' socks when asked if he would rather be put through to the men's department. The next time I got the call, I tried to be subtle about the fact that I was getting a manager. I think that someone else had made the mistake of saying something like, "Hold on, let me ask my manager." And by the time the manager got the call, he had already hung up. As soon as I heard, "Do you have any socks?" I fought the urge to vomit as I tried to be casual. After he asked his inevitable, weirdly specific questions about these sock sizes, I told him that I had to place them on hold so that I could go check. Of course, I bolted for the manager's office at the back of the store, probably looking like a lunatic. My manager dropped what she was doing to come back to the phone with me and take the call. The dude was still on the line when she picked up the phone, but as soon as she introduced herself and asked how she could help, he hung up. I didn't hear anything about him calling again after that, and I sincerely hoped he got scared enough to knock it off. More likely though, he just started calling somewhere else. This may not seem that creepy. At the time I thought it was relatively harmless, but I've since heard similar stories about weird calls to retail workers, which prompted me to share this here.